Hello everybody, some random but important property news. I watched another podcast with Christopher Joye where he actually outlined how he arrived at his numbers, and the number being that the Australian property market is going to pull back. Let's remind ourselves, this is the man who actually predicted the historic rise of the property prices that we've seen since the late 2020 and into about a year and a half or 2 years after that, when nobody believed that would be the case. But this man, Christopher Joye, is actually looking at the numbers like nobody else does and is. So what he said in this podcast, I'll actually link it in the description below. I don't know what the podcast was with. It was obviously with an Australian man, the podcast. So he did say that the property would pull back 15 to 25%. The way he arrived at it is the more important bit is that he took the, if I'm remembering correct, the data from the Reserve Bank that is free of information request, or it was public already, not sure. Oh, the reason I'm sweating is I just got back from a jog. It's very hot yesterday and today in Sydney, but nevertheless I went for a jog. I recommend it to everyone. Don't have to do it long, 20-25 minutes, intense as you can. That's all you need. 3 times a week is plenty. So back on topic is so he said 15 to 25%. He got the data from Reserve Bank. The data was obviously created and analyzed by Reserve Bank, and he said, I don't know, several hundred of Reserve Bank analysts had arrived at the conclusion that this rate increases were not going to see any pullback or any influence in the prices of the real estate, where he did a different look at the data. Again, you can go into details by looking at the podcast, and he found that and his team is only maybe 20 people, he said, found a very different picture, where they found again from 15 to 25%. So far, he said, and we know the property is pulled back about 10%, so he's seeing another at least 5 to 15% depending on the rate of increases that Reserve Bank is going to continue to do. I think we're at 3.25 right now, which is below the American mortgage rates. And speaking of which, American mortgage rates are when the rates were seen to have come back a little bit, especially in the last few months. They've come back up. I think a 2 or 10-year yield has gone just ticked over 4%. So what they're saying that they're going to see easily 7% mortgage rates, which has in turn seen pullback in the real estate in the US already. So they are going to be struggling. They have struggled in the past. Australia hasn't, but it turns out, and it looks like it might be Australia's turn to do so. How we're going to avoid it, I'm not sure. Again, our rate here officially is lower than American rate, which is unusual. I think normally US is lower than us, so we'll either have to catch up with them or they'll have to come down to meet us. But I think the earlier will be the true where we'll rise the rates as this inflation is not stopping. Honestly, I think there's a lot of gouging going on in the supermarkets. Look, at least they sell food. Well, at least about 5% of their food there is actually product. There is food. The rest is packaged garbage, if you ask me. But in any case, they do add a lot more value than some other businesses. But some of the prices are just going insane. Like I would buy things that are sometimes half price, and half price used to be $5 and now half price $6, which means that this product is actually $12, which when I'm parting with $5 or $6 for half price, I think to myself, is it really worth it? Add double to it. It's definitely not worth it. Some of the things in the supermarkets is almost as if they're using funny money. But yeah, the random facts again. The property turned into a little bit of a longer conversation, but it's not looking good. But he did say, Christopher Joye did say that he was asked when he sees the bottom, and he is seeing bottom fairly soon. Which, who am I? But I kind of disagree. I mean, these things will have to play out a little bit longer. So he's seeing the bottom towards the end of this year, 2023, or first quarter of the next year, which is really just around the corner, especially in the real estate years, which again, it should take longer. I think he is in his model is projecting another few increases, but what happens if we have more than few increases? So he would just have to adjust his model and say, no, well, the pullback is going to be more than that, and because we are increasing more into the future, the bottom will not, or it won't bottom out end of 23 or beginning of 24. It'll have to be later than that until eventually they stop raising rates. But it's very possible that there is another possibility that the rates might spike. How do they spike? See, most of us ordinary people don't think about how rates are created in the money markets. Is that if the bonds lose value, the interest rate goes up. But why would the bonds lose value? They would lose value if there's a loss of confidence in these bonds. For example, the government bonds, the treasuries in America. If there is even a whiff of a possibility that the American government won't be able to service the debt, let alone pay it off, meaning that if their debt is devalued, or the debt rating is devalued, the price of that bond goes down, the risk is up, so the price of bond goes down. But because the risk is up, the interest rate on that higher risk now needs to go up. And whether the Reserve Bank of Australia or Federal Reserve in America or central banks around the world raise or decrease rates, the real rates out there in the market will go up on the 2, 10, 20, 30 year treasuries, therefore lifting the mortgage rates in America, and therefore affecting, just like the tide lifting in America would lift everywhere around the world. So there's a possibility of that, which means that the Christopher Joye's prediction of 15 to 25% may end up being a lot more, depending again on the rates.